When time is something you might not have left with someone you love, you realize how valuable it is. My phone buzzed while I was at the diner on break, half-eaten and elbow-deep in receipts. The name of Tia Rose glowed on the screen. At that moment, I realized something was off. Unless it was about Abuelita, she never called. Tia's voice was shaking as she said, "She's in the hospital. She is not expected to survive the night." I didn't think twice. I picked up my bag, tossed my apron in the break room sink, and hurried to my car. Every other morning, the same rusted 2004 Civic required a jump start. I didn't give a damn. I needed to go to Laredo. If I was lucky, the car held together for 2 hours. When I turned onto the highway, the gas light blinked. Naturally, my phone bill and rent had been paid with my most recent salary. My phone was at 12% and I had $20 in my wallet. Not the best. But ideal wasn't the point here. It has to do with family. I considered Abuelita. How each morning before school, Mother would prepare huevos with tortillas for me. Her voice was never elevated. Even after my parents passed away, I continued to work quietly and methodically. A hospital bed and a deteriorating memory were not what she deserved. She was entitled to know that I still remembered what she had given me. I applied more pressure on the gas. I would succeed. I was forced to. However, the gas light changed from a warning to a threat around halfway down the freeway. Beside an abandoned strip mall, I noticed a battered Dollar Tree sign shining in the rain. It wasn't the best. It was open, I needed the charger, and perhaps a miracle was in order, even though it didn't appear safe. I parked beneath a broken streetlight that cut the engine and buzzed like a flytrap. Like it was appreciative of the respite, my automobile let out a wheeze. With the exception of a few straggling carts and a battered white vehicle parked a few spots too crookedly, the parking lot was almost deserted. After mentally noting it, I went inside. The whiter Dollar Tree had a lemon cleanser and plastic odor. The shelves were sparse and dispersed. Everyone, but those like myself, seemed to have forgotten about the store. The final moments of a ruined week are being chased by people. I walked quickly. Water, granola bar, and charger. I could only afford that. I saw that the woman behind the counter appeared to have experienced her fair share of difficult evenings as I made my way to the register. Her name was Darlene, and she scanned my belongings as quickly as if it didn't matter if the system crashed in the middle of the scan. Without glancing up, she said, "You driving far tonight?" "Lard," I said. "Family emergency?" Slowly, she nodded. "Make sure your doors are locked. Recently, people have begun acting strangely." I didn't inquire about her meaning. I simply thanked them quietly and retreated into the hazy darkness. I spotted the van once more at that point. The car was now parked too close. I gasped for air while searching for my keys. The driver's side door opened at that point and a person got out. A man wearing a sweatshirt. At first he approached me as if he had always been there and said nothing. The chilly air slid beneath my collar. Then he lunged. Hissing, "Don't scream." He pulled me in the direction of the van as his grasp closed like a vice around my wrist. My feet scuffed on the paved surface. Sweat, engine oil, and a nasty scent filled my nostrils. I didn't consider it. I responded. Cold and slick in my palm, the water bottle crashed up into his jaw. I sensed the jolt of his grip releasing as I heard the thud. I yelled just enough. Not some courteous call for assistance. My shrill, throat-ripping scream of fear reverberated throughout the parking lot. I thought for a moment that was it. Headlights sliced through the fog, but he would kill me for making noise. Near the entryway, a beaten pickup screamed to a stop. 3 large young men wearing steel-toed boots and work shirts smeared with oil leaped out. "What the devil are you doing?" Among them, one yelled. The man stopped. He glanced from them to me. He then gave me a violent shove before rushing back into the van. The tires squealed. With its taillights flickering like malevolent eyes, the van vanished into the night. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt as I lay on the ground with the cold seeping into my jeans. I was helped to sit up by one of the guys. "Are you all right? Did he cause you any harm?" I gave a headshake. 2 days to respond. Their Leo, Rico, and Javier were their names. A late shift is finished by local mechanics. Ordinary guys with good timing and big hearts. Rico said, "You have to wait for the police." "I can't," I said in a whisper. "I have to get to the hospital." "My abuelita," Javier kept to himself. "Just in case," he said, pulling a small folding knife from his pocket and passing it to me. It felt like armor, but it wasn't much. I got back in my car, the knife tucked beside the emergency brake, and drove with the kind of focus you only get when you've seen how close darkness can come. The road blurred under my tires. My hands clutched the wheel like it might fly away. Every shadow felt heavier now. Every headlight behind me made my pulse skip. But I kept driving. I was forced to. That charger I bought for $125 got my phone back to life long enough to check directions. No missed calls, no updates. That worried me more than anything. I didn't weep. Not when the adrenaline faded off. Not when my shoulders started to throb from striking the pavement. Not when I thought about what could have occurred if those guys hadn't showed up. I just continued driving. Because when your whole life has been survival, dead parents, late rent, cheap food, and cheaper odds, you learn to carry away fear like spare clothing. You keep moving. You pray and you hope someone up there is still listening. The hospital lights looked like salvation when they finally came through the cloud. I parked sideways and ran inside without caring about signs or security desks. I discovered her room by instinct. And there she was, Abuelita, eyes closed, skin pale and frail but alive, barely. I fell into the chair next to her and grasped her hand, murmuring promises I wasn't sure I could make. I made it. I told her, I'm here. And for the first time in hours, I let myself breathe. They say you measure life in milestones. Birthdays, graduations, weddings. But sometimes life's measured in the tranquil moments that follow after the storm. Like watching your abuela sleep as equipment beeps softly around her. Or sitting in your beat-up car at 3 a.m. staring at a crumpled Dollar Tree receipt like it contains the answers. The charger was still functional. Half of the granola bar was smashed. Javier gave me a knife, but it seemed heavier than it should have. I had no idea what was going to occur tomorrow. The cost of gas for the travel home, the missed shifts at the diner, and the hospital costs. Like a second storm, it all awaited me. However, the fact that I was still alive tonight had to be sufficient. In that parking lot, what happened? I wasn't defined by it. However, it altered me. I now look behind me before I drive. White vans are not trustworthy. The knife is kept in my backpack. I glance over my shoulder a bit more frequently. I've seen how quickly safety can vanish, not because I'm afraid, and since I'm aware that nobody will come to my aid the next time. I made it through with a bruised wrist, $1, and a prayer. And the world will discover that I'm harder to drag the next time it attempts to steal something from me. I'm harder to drag the next time it attempts to steal something from me. The drive wasn't even meant to be long. Just a little Summersville shoot. I took engagement pictures for a couple that abruptly stopped communicating with me. No call, no justification. I had spent the entire day chilling in the woods with my broken Canon and a thermos of cheap coffee, and I had spent gas money I didn't have. Even I hadn't eaten. Now that midnight had passed, Route 19 was a wall of fog so dense that it appeared to be alive. The 2005 Toyota iDrive, which has more corrosion than paint, shook like if it were dying. When I came to the outskirts of a town in the middle of nowhere with boarded-up houses and a single flickering sign in the mist, the gas light was already on. Dollar Tree. In a cemetery, it appeared to be salvation. My stomach rumbled. I killed the engine as soon as I got into the lot. I had precisely $512 left on a rumpled ATM receipt, yet my bank account was negative once more. If I was lucky, I thought I would be able to get a pack of ramen, a phone charger, and some gum. Entering the store was like entering a time warp. Overhead fluorescent lights buzzed like dead bees. Half of the shelves were supplied. The scent of dust and plastic filled the air. Additionally, the only persons inside were a security guard sitting in a folding chair outside the entrance, Marlene, and a weary older woman behind the counter. He appeared to have seen better decades, and his name badge said Hank. I hurried down the aisles, throwing my dejected haul in a green basket. I was too exhausted, too cold, and too broke to give a damn. Then everything changed when the front doorbell jangled. I initially assumed it was some drunken Halloween leftover, a practical joke, or perhaps a viral stunt on TikTok. Barefoot, she staggered in. Behind her, the door slammed with a blast of icy fog. What remained of her bridal gown stuck to her like damp gauze. Its hem was torn. The bodice had a black stain. Her cheeks were streaked with makeup as if she had been crying for hours. She held a shattered bottle of champagne in her hand like a dagger. Nobody made a move. Not Hank, not Marlene, and not me. The woman laughed aloud. Sharp, high, and almost melodic in the most terrible manner. She muttered, "You ever ruin your whole life in one night?" Marlene reached for something under the counter. Hank stood up slowly, his hand fluttering at his belt. However, I failed to spot a weapon there. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to don't." The bride raised the bottle and snapped. She had raw knuckles. Her veil was covered in blood. Something about her felt strange, like if something significant had broken inside of her. And it wasn't simply that she was intoxicated or angry. She knocked over a peanut butter display as she stumbled toward the confectionery section, brittle before turning back to us. She spat and left my groom at the altar. He was caught with my brother. In the limousine, my own damn brother. I blinked. Hank moved toward the door. "I fixed it," she said in a whisper, grinning. Her teeth glinted with blood. "They will never again kiss anyone." At that time, I sensed a change in the air. There was a change in the room, but the artificial Christmas decorations that were hanging above the room did not move. A cooler thing than the fog. With one hand on my phone as if it could save my life, I retreated toward the chip aisle, but there, no service was provided. Hank, of course, stepped forward cautiously. "Just let's discuss, okay? There is no one here to harm you." She gave him a look as though he had offended her dog. I took the necessary action. The bride lost her temper. "You weren't present." They weren't seen laughing. Marlene had a pallid face. Her hand was still concealed beneath the register. I sincerely wished that there was pepper spray or a panic button. Then I found out Lacey's name even though she hadn't said it. "Join me in eye contact, you." She gave a hiss. I went cold. "You resemble her." My honorary companion. Make a fake smile. She was always acting as though she was unaware. However, she did. She allowed it to occur. I gave a headshake. "I'm not." She made a lunge. It took place. Very quickly. She was 5 feet away in 1 second. Then she was pushing the ragged champagne glass to my throat and smashing me into the end cap of cheap greeting cards. She yelled, "You should have stopped me." Her breath had the odor of anger and stale wine. I was unable to breathe or move. Hank took the initiative at that point. We both sprawled when he tackled her from behind. The sound of the glass bottle breaking on the floor reached my ears. With a horrible guttural cry, Lacey slashed madly. Hank gave a yell. His sleeve erupted with blood. Then a clatter. The air was divided by the sound. Lacey fell. With a shotgun trembling in her hands, Marlene stood behind the counter. And the Dollar Tree was quiet for a while. With sirens piercing the fog like saw blades, the police arrived slowly. They questioned us for hours while closing the store. With my hands shaking and my ramen spilling in the parking lot, I slumped on the sidewalk beneath a warm blanket. Lacey had passed away. Her brother and groom were as well. Killed 2 towns over in a motel. She would, after returning to the church, they walked barefoot through the fog and into the Dollar Tree. It was dubbed the discount store bride murders by the local media. For roughly a week, it was widely shared. Before her body was cold, it was broken down by TikToks, Twitter threads, and real crime podcasts. People argued over whether she was a monster, mentally ill, or both. No one mentioned how terrified I was, how her eyes looked before she lost it, how I still occasionally smell her perfume, cheap gardenia and alcohol, and how I feel the glass at my throat. Hank needs sutures. After 2 days, Marlene resigned. Even though I was informed that the store would permanently close at the end of the month, I can still see it when I close my eyes. The way the blown lights illuminated that aisle, the sound of broken glass crunching under my boots, the manner in which one choice, a trip for inexpensive noodles, made me confront someone else's horror and turn it into my own. I rarely discuss that evening. People usually want specifics when I do. Was she attractive? Was she insane? Were you aware that you were in danger? I knew, of course. Before she even opened her words, the air informed me. After that, I stopped doing freelance work. I paid off my overdraft costs, sold my camera, and secured a position at the DMV processing photo IDs. Dull, steady, and predictable. Even though I still argue with my landlord about the heat and live in the same chilly flat, I now carry a can of mace in every coat pocket. I haven't had any ramen since, and I sleep with the light in the hallway on. There are times when your life is divided in two, both before and after. It wasn't a wedding to me. Just past midnight in a Dollar Tree, fate and fog were present. Being bold isn't always necessary to survive. It's about showing there, being in the wrong spot and still managing to get out. I didn't become much stronger that night. It improved my intelligence. Shadows aren't usually where monsters hide. They occasionally don gowns. They appear to be in pain at times. Furthermore, knowing when to flee and whom to trust in times of crisis might often be more important for survival than physical prowess. Don't undervalue those who are silent. Additionally, never disregard the warning indicators. thought there was a floor in rock bottom. It has a basement, it turns out. I worked 12-hour shifts at the county rehab center that fall, primarily at night. Patients screaming at 3 in the morning, bedpans and sponge washes, the entire transaction. After my dad suffered a stroke in July, things have become worse. The man who fried catfish on Sundays was suddenly incapable of using a spoon. It mattered nothing that his disability check was processing. My credit card was already maxed out, and I was using it to pay for groceries, medications, and rent. A large red note had been put on the door by my landlord. One last caution. I accepted Jasmine's offer of her old Corolla so I could deliver some food and medication for Dad. I couldn't afford to be fussy, even though she warned me that the gas tank ran strangely and the brakes squealed. That evening, a flash flood warning was in effect. I didn't give a damn. I needed to acquire Dad's medication. His blood pressure would rise in just a few hours. I decided to save gas by using the back roads, roadways made of gravel that wind through pine woods and pastures. The rain started at that point. God seemed to be trying to drown the entire county with the heavy pounding rain. The water quickly surged. Roads began to disappear. Up ahead, I noticed taillights blinking behind a gray wall. I realized then that I wouldn't be able to make it. Like a broken neon promise, I caught a glimpse of the green Dollar Tree sign flashing. Only the place is lit and open. I bathed in tremors, pulled into the lot, and ran inside, unaware that whatever happened after the storm was more than wind and thunder. Along with the rain, something else had arrived. The interior of the Dollar Tree was terrible. Overhead, lights buzzed. Half of the aisles were dim, as if they had given up. With each stride, the floor adhered to my shoes. As if it were on life support, the freezer on the back wall wheezed. Behind the counter, there's just one person. When I walked in, Derek, a young man from the tech college, hardly looked up. I picked up a dollar store umbrella that wouldn't hold up to a sneeze, some instant noodles, and some cheap batteries for my dad's TV remote. I only needed enough to last till my next paycheck. The glass doors rattled as thunder cracked once more. Derek cautiously looked through my belongings. He tapped the register and added, "You probably ain't going to make it home tonight." The bridge over Mason Creek was recently closed. I muttered a curse to myself. My phone has no bars, just myself, no GPS. The weight of everything I couldn't afford to lose, along with a beat-up car. I slammed the door after packing the suitcases into the passenger seat. Some of the storm has subsided. There was just enough of a drizzle now to give the impression that the entire world was covered in wet glass. Then I noticed it. He was sitting in the passenger seat, a haggard, soaked-through man with gray skin and lifeless eyes, wearing a woolen shirt 2 sizes too big, just sitting still. However, I was aware that I had locked that door. His head twisted slowly, crackling as if his bones didn't want to move before I could scream. Then in a whisper so faint I thought I had heard it, he murmured, "You're late." My legs gave out. The air was soup-thick and heavy. With my heart thumping, I dropped the bags. Then I dashed back toward the shop, toward any human being, any light, any voice. I smashed through the doors of the Dollar Tree like a slug, sending plastic pumpkins flying and slamming into a display of Halloween sweets. Derek didn't even flinch. As if I had disrupted his snooze, he simply looked up from his phone. He said, "You good?" Draw slowly, as though he was no longer surprised by anything. "There's someone in my car," I gasped. "In the front seat." He addressed me. Derek's eyebrow went up. I locked it. It was locked, indeed. I promise. He didn't appear astonished, but he also didn't laugh. Rather, he looked first at the side window and then at the doors. The car was deserted. Rain puddles and the crumpled plastic bag I dumped on the pavement were all that was visible. No indication of the man. Derek's voice even added, "I don't see nobody. Do you believe I'm lying?" I lost my temper. "No, ma'am," he responded. "But when the storms come here, strange things happen." It's not only tonight. The quiet laugh behind me came at that moment. I turned to see Harris, an elderly man leaning on a cart as if he had been born there, half covered in a rubbish bag. He wheezed, as I mentioned. He follows the rain, appears when the water level rises. He was looking for a ride but never found one. Derek glanced at me after glancing at the elderly man. "Are you certain he spoke?" "As clear as day. He told my cousin the same thing," Harris whispered. "In 2004. You arrive late and then disappear like a fog." The shiver in my bones wasn't caused by the rain, even though I didn't want to accept it. It was something more profound. a terror that had been inherited from generations. I waited for the yacht in the store. When the rain stopped, I looked for movement in the automobile. Then, mustering all the strength I lacked, I went back outside. The scent of the automobile had changed. Not awful, just a little strange, like river water that has been in a pail for too long. Still hanging from the mirror was Jasmine's air freshener. Beneath a pine tree that had turned gray, there was the distinct smell of something ancient and moist ground. Mildew. I opened the doors once more and looked inside. But it was empty. He sat bone dry in the passenger seat as if he had never been there before. However, I was aware. His speech sounded like water dripping into a deep well, I recalled. The way his neck had bent, groaning under strain like damp wood. Something like that is not something you forget. You don't dream about details. That night, I didn't make it home. There was no traffic on the major road.
Sipping watery coffee and gazing out the window as the rain came back in waves, I stayed the night at a neighboring 24-hour cafe.
Dad had already forgotten his medication when I finally saw him the following day. The neighbor had phoned an ambulance because his blood pressure had risen. He had returned to the hospital. More expenses, increased guilt, and yet another breach in the system. I shared everything with Jasmine. She kept the windows down for a week after that, but she didn't laugh. Claimed that the odor persisted, as if it had seeped into the cloth. I got a text from Derek a few days later. I give up. Couldn't stand the emotion any longer. What did he mean, I asked. That guy has been trying to hitchhike since '98, Harris says. His body was never located following the flood. Disappeared just past Mason Creek on the road. I did not respond. How could I respond? Whether you believe in something or not doesn't matter. Nevertheless, they appear. A year has passed. I check the back seat twice every time it rains. It makes no difference if I'm going to work or just driving to Walgreens. I keep the windows rolled up, lock the doors, and look in all the mirrors as if something could suddenly materialize. I swear I hear it sometimes. A murmur. You're running late. It usually occurs in October when the roads are covered in slick leaves and the wind is carrying the fragrance of muddy ditches and wet pine. I occasionally feel as though someone has sat down behind me when I'm driving. The mirror shows nothing. It's there, yet it's nothing when I turn around. I am aware of that. I no longer visit that Dollar Tree, not even in the daytime. Derek was swapped out. By the dumpster, Harris continues to grumble. Furthermore, I still owe more money than I can remember. Dad has been in and out of treatment. His medications are not constant. The bills keep coming in. Food stamps aren't flexible. Being poor doesn't give a damn that you're afraid. It simply makes things heavier to bear. But I continue. 1 week at a time, 1 day, 1 shift. And I will always remember what transpired in that parking lot. I was not harmed by the Shadow Man. Not at all. He did, however, leave something behind. A terror that lingers in your lungs like mold. Storms are said to wash things away. They do, however, occasionally bring things back. Items we believe to be gone. Things that were never truly gone. Items we believe to be gone. Things that were never truly gone. When I received the voicemail, I didn't cry. I was exhausted, not because I wasn't depressed. You're so exhausted that your emotions took over and waited in line. My aunt remarked, "Your grandfather had a stroke," in a deep voice. "He's asking for you, that was it." My cheap prepaid phone was compressed with 10 seconds of grief. With my shoes filthy from the back alley and my dollar burger apron still on, I sat on the floor at the edge of the twin mattress. The front of my apron was covered with grease. Mom, whose breath was harsh from a sugar crash, was sleeping in the next room. I looked at the bank app once more. Was it 17 or 22? The bus ride to Fresno, snacks, and possibly a gift for my Abul, who used to buy me lemon soda and tell me I was stronger than I appeared, had to be covered by that. Mom nodded without opening her eyes when I told her I was leaving. She whispered, "Be safe, baby." But I could tell she wasn't paying much attention. It was past midday and already hot enough to melt skin when I arrived at the Dollar Tree across from the Bakersfield bus depot. Through the sliding glass I went. Doors into a blast of sour lemon cleanser and phony chili air. Half of the shelves were bare. Wrappers melting candy. With the exception of a single bouquet of depressing-looking synthetic roses, the flower area was picked clean. I picked up those flowers, 2 bottles of water, and some off-brand cheese puffs. I had hardly enough coin for the bus after that. I noticed the eerie Carl leaning against the register as I was making my way there. As usual, there was a shadow with a human face outside the window. Even though I hadn't yet witnessed the worst of it, I didn't like the way he stared at me. Have you ever left a store knowing that someone is waiting for you? Waiting, not the nice sort. Not your friend giving you a hug or your mother giving you a ride. The heavy type, that is. Like a dropped phone in a storm drain, it makes your stomach turn. Carl was that person. White tank soiled beneath a crumpled button-up, dusty baseball cap pulled low, hunched like a broken stop sign, always there. He was mostly overlooked. Rita, the manager, referred to him as a loiterer. Claimed the police arrived last month but were unable to take any action. Just a man waiting for a cab that never came with no warrant charges or any threat. Carl, however, had a different perspective on people than most people. He gazed without blinking as if he could already taste your terror. Plastic bags swung at my side as I stepped out, trying not to look him in the eye. He moved just enough to obstruct my way, but I had already taken 2 steps out the door. Sweetheart, you need a ride somewhere. Like wet paper, his voice cracked. He smelled like beer, foul breath, and worse, something ruined up close. No, I responded hastily, taking a sidestep. However, he grabbed my wrist. Hey, I shouted in a loud voice. I pulled, but he held on tighter. Let go of me. No, you must now be impolite. I didn't consider it. I gave him a hard kick to the shin. Carl grunted and staggered back, but he held me. He actually appeared eager, as though he was enjoying this. Then a blur flew by me like angels on wheels. A skateboard struck him squarely in the back while it was flying like a rocket. Carl gave a howl. I noticed them at that point. The ones that are constantly skating out front are the teenagers. There were 4 of them. 2 girls and 2 boys, maybe 16 or 17, with wild hair under snapbacks wearing ragged Vans and graphic tees. Rita would often scold the same children for lingering and scraping the curb outdoors. At the moment, however, they appeared to be a SWAT team composed entirely of Mountain Dew and poor choices. What are you having trouble with, man? Between Carl and myself, a tall, slender youngster wearing pink shoelaces skidded to a stop. Carl released his grip and staggered back. You have no business doing this. I'm pretty sure it is, my friend. The girl whose hair has a green stripe stepped forward and snapped. For weeks you have been skulking around here. Get lost before I call my cousin, the other youngster said, bending down and grabbing his skateboard. He works as a police officer. Carl gave an animal-like hiss, glanced from me to them, and then turned away. He stared at me for too long. Then, like a bug in the light, he ran to his old gray vehicle and sped off from the lot. My heart continued to pound my ribs as I fell against the cinder block wall. The children surrounded me. You okay? The green street girl inquired, swallowed hard, and nodded. Yes, I believe so. The guy with the pink lace said, Dude, you're always out here. Rita no longer calls the police, claims they never take any action. He said that he has tried other things. Mostly frightens people. However, such was not the case today. I said, my voice shaking. Thank you. Really? No issue. I got a Gatorade from Green Street's knapsack. Are you going somewhere? Bus stop in Fresno. Well, she remarked, good luck. Here, we'll keep watch. I trembled as I left, not because of fear, but because I knew that I wouldn't have been able to go if they hadn't been there. The bus stop had a depressing and oily stench. My wrist still hurt a little from where Carl grabbed it, so I boarded holding the flowers in one hand and the cheap snacks in the other. The journey took 6 hours and change, and the air conditioner wasn't working. I was unable to sleep until I arrived to the hospital exactly in time, and the hum of the road was like a lullaby. Abua was frail and hardly conscious, but his eyes brightened at the sight of me. Mina here. I returned his smile, despite the fact that it made my heart burst. Until the beeping equipment stopped, that smile kept me going. I reported the incident to the Bakersfield police after the burial. As I talked, the officer hardly raised his head. You claim he didn't hurt you even though he grabbed your wrist. I told him that he was trying to drag me to his car. I let out a yell. He took off running. Other than the wrist, was there any physical contact? I gazed at him. That is insufficient. We'll file it, but without any camera footage and without a name or license plate number. That was the reason he trailed off. That. No arrest, no follow-up, just a systemic shrug. I was numb when I left the station. It might have been worse. Everyone said the same thing. However, they intended to say, be thankful you weren't killed or raped. The statement, next time you might not be so lucky, was left out. That evening, I purchased a can of pepper spray from Amazon. Expedited delivery. Additionally, I took a few Gatorades to the children outside Dollar Tree each week after work. It made no difference if they were sitting around doing nothing or skating. I had been saved by them. No one else seems to notice either. It didn't get any simpler. Mom's blood sugar began to spike more frequently. Some months, the expense of her insulin exceeded our rent. Even after taking on more work and skipping a class, I failed. I began to mislead creditors by pretending that checks were on their way. I stopped responding to unknown numbers. I played it all over at night. Carl's breath, his hand on my wrist, and the expression in his eyes. I pondered what could have occurred if those children hadn't been present. Would there have been another person to take over? Would the news feature me? The scroll obscured another headline. I detested the fact that I was so close to disappearing, but I equally detested the fact that I remained unseen. Nobody followed up by phone. Only I, the girl who shouted and continued to walk, not the police, the hospital, or the system. I now search for the children whenever I walk by the Dollar Tree, which still has the same half-stocked shelves and a flickering fluorescent bulb. I wave at them if I see them. If not, I have a few cold beverages close to the bench. They recognize me. The least I can do is this. What Carl wanted that day is still a mystery to me. However, I am aware of predators. Don't require justification. All they need is a chance, and we continue to provide them with that. The loiterers are ignored. We turn our heads away from the spooky ones. When girls express feelings of insecurity, we label them as theatrical, and we inquire, why was she alone? When something occurs, in all honesty, I nearly made the news. One damaged camera or cracked tail light away. I now carry pepper spray, walk more quickly, and never leave the house without knowing my way. Although it's survival, it's not safety, and sometimes that's sufficient. It's survival, it's not safety, and sometimes that's sufficient. The way that grief rewires your brain is not explained. You begin tracking days and little choices, whether your body will betray you in the checkout line when you discover your card won't go through, whether you can buy milk, and whether the automobile can survive another week. It's been like way since Dad died away in March of last year. It's basically survival math every day. It was chilly and raining in late November. In addition to a pile of past due notices hidden among pizza coupons, I had $22 in my checking account. My salary from the strip mall shop was barely enough to pay for food, let alone gas. I needed ramen, toothpaste, and, if I was lucky, a $5 charger that evening. Dollar Tree seemed like my best option. Walmart seemed like an extravagance. Lena had a pharmacology test the following morning, but she still consented to accompany me. The only one who continues to check in and who doesn't cringe when I discuss debt or death is her. She whispered, "This place is depressing," as we entered. She grimaced as she picked up a tomato soup can that was dented. "You sure you don't want to just hit Walmart?" My response was, "Don't have the gas," while seeming to chuckle. I noticed him standing close to the door, hood pulled up, face depressed, eyes crazy as we passed the cleaning aisle. He appeared to have gone days without sleep. He just gazed without saying anything. He was simply another guy trying to remain warm, I reminded myself. This town has a lot of happenings, but my stomach didn't feel right because of the way he gazed at us, like if he was making a decision. I tightened my hold on my basket. Simply enter, leave, avoid causing difficulties. That was the strategy. There is a certain quietness about Dollar Tree at night. It's the kind that irritates your skin, not calm. The type it cautions you against turning around too quickly. The register was being operated by Miss Betty. Since I was a child, she has been employed there. Her name tag was often crooked, and she had a menthol and gardenia odor. She had the ability to recall your dog's name even if it had been a year since you last saw her. On the counter, Lena and I emptied our belongings. They had 2 cans of beans, toothpaste, ramen, and their cheapest off-brand charger. After examining the objects, Miss Betty leaned in as if she had something important to share with us, but didn't want the walls to hear. "Be careful out there," she said in a whisper. 3 times today, that guy by the door has been in. I haven't purchased anything. I took a look behind me. He was still standing beside the seasonal aisle, partially concealed by some Halloween skeletons that had been left over. "What's his deal?" Lena lowered her voice and requested. Miss Betty pursed her lips. "The sheriff has inquired about him. There was a serious incident at the Highway Motel last week." Beside me, Lena is tense. "What kind of bad?" Betty took a while to respond. "She simply slowly checked our belongings and maybe drugs," he said. "It could be worse." Girls had previously vanished from that area. My stomach dropped. You don't get that kind of terror all at once. It enters through a locked door like a draft. We made our payment quickly. I could tell that Lena kept her keys in the pocket of her hoodie. The man remained motionless as he watched, but there was a change in his gaze. He wasn't only idling about, he waited. As we pushed the door open, the drizzle transformed into a chilling mist that stuck to my clothing. The scent of cigarette ash and wet concrete filled the air. Lena's rusty '07 Civic, our vehicle, was parked in the rear, close to a row of broken shopping carts and a black dumpster that made my stomach turn. Lena said, "Keys now." With trembling fingers, I fumbled in my coat pocket. I detested how sluggish I became when I was afraid. It cried out in my head, "Hurry, run, move." However, I felt as though I was submerged. Then I heard it. Behind us, the sliding doors hissed open, deliberate, hefty footsteps. I was afraid to turn around. One voice said, "Hey, y'all got a lighter?" Lena whirled around. "Keep walking." With his hands in the sleeves of his discolored sweatshirt, the man paused beneath a flickering lamppost. He seemed amused by something we didn't yet know, as evidenced by his incorrect and excessively broad smile. I let the keys fall. Before I could blink, Lena grabbed them and jerked open the passenger door. "Get in," she said sternly. The man moved closer and I staggered into the seat. His words were, "I just need a favor." His voice was gruff and low. There was something hungry in it. As Lena closed her door, he put a hand to the driver's side glass. "Hold on, I just need," she stopped him in his tracks. The engine coughed but held as we bounded out of the lot, tires squealing. I took one glance back. He didn't have to chase, so he remained there in the streetlight, observing rather than pursuing. He was well aware of his abilities. Until we reached the petrol station on Highway 78, we remained silent. Lena arrived in a room with the best light she could find. She continued to hold onto the wheel as if she were preparing for a collision. My breathing was shallow. I was trembling all the time. I struggled to recall why I ever believed Dollar Tree would be a reliable option as I gazed at the chilly convenience store window, illuminated by neon beer signs and lottery posters. At last, Lena replied, "We ought to call the police." Didn't respond immediately. "And what do you say?" He took no action. He trailed us. She lost her temper. He waited. "Did you see his face?" I gave a nod. Yes, I did see. However, I was also aware of the sheriff's response. Just a misunderstanding man hanging around in the wrong place, no attack, no theft. He would leave before they arrived. But I had altered in some way. That night, a wall cracked open. I felt more than just exposed. It seemed as if the world had changed into something sharper and colder, and I felt pursued. The heat scarcely worked while we sat there for a bit, letting the car idle. To request an additional week's rent, I texted my landlord. No response. I looked at my account. 1142. Even though the man hadn't touched me, I still felt violated. That kind of fear irritates you. It persists. It informs you that safety was never real, and that you may be completely alone in the dark with just one broken flashlight or missed paycheck. I also thought it was true. I still do. I stopped going to Dollar Tree alone after that evening. I started paying more for Walmart delivery after Lena got me a pepper spray keychain, even if it risked incurring overdraft fines. I made sure to check the back seat twice each time I made my way to my car after work. People claim that nothing occurred that evening. Something happened even though there was no police report, no news stories, and no blood on the street. It's simply not something that can be captured on camera or described. When a stranger approaches you too closely, your heart begins to beat differently. It's choosing to keep your head down, pretend to make a phone conversation, and cross the street despite your instincts telling you to look up. That dude left me scarred without ever touching me. I was reminded of how little separated me from danger just by his presence. But it wasn't just him. Then came the actual wait. I was reminded by my boss's voicemail that my hours were being reduced when I arrived home, and noticed the overdue light bill on the counter. That night, I ate ramen that I could hardly taste while sitting on the floor. I was thinking about how sick of being scared I was. Because you're afraid of more than just strangers. It's the college loans, the rent, and the emptiness that arises when you realize that your safety net is nothing more than air. Monsters are not necessary for the world to break you. Sometimes all it takes to travel somewhere safer is one awful night, a shut door, and insufficient gas money. I never saw that man again, but his shadow is all about me. I now bear that darkness as if it were a second skin. All about me. I now bear that darkness as if it were a second skin. I wouldn't have been out there at all if Tasha hadn't pleaded. As the nurse in training with 3 planners and color-coded flashcards, she is consistently the dependable and well-organized person. However, she neglected to get the notebooks and gauze needed for our research group's trauma simulations, and that ended up becoming my issue. My pediatric care midterm just ended in a failure. I'm trying to forget the things my ex texted me. And once more, the rent was past due. However, I owed Tasha. When I overdrafted my account last month to purchase textbooks, she had taken care of me. I complied when she begged me and threw the keys to her ancient Corolla. The storm had quickly moved in. As I went off the main road and onto the backway near the marsh, I saw thick, angry clouds spew rain sideways. Every time I round a curve, my GPS would lag and the highway was inundated. The wipers were barely able to keep pace. The world seemed to be engulfed in gray water. Every part of me wanted to turn around, yet it was there, like some cheap lighthouse through the rain. A Dollar Tree sign's dim green glow. Hunched against the rain like survivors of a lost town, the store was next to an abandoned petrol station. I parked under a flickering lamppost as I entered into the largely deserted lot. I breathed and turned off the engine. The rain pounded like fists on the roof. The time was around 11:30 p.m. It's the type of hour when minor issues turn into major ones. But I left. I reminded myself to just gather the things and leave. At the time, I was unaware that some things were waiting outside rather than within. When you're in a rush, certain things don't care. I hurried inside and shut the door after myself. It was faint and out of tune, yet the bell above it jangled once. The store was cold inside. Long shadows were thrown over largely empty shelves by the fluorescent lights above, which buzzed like irate insects. There was no music. No additional clients. It smelt of something burning and mildew. Trying not to pay attention to every step, I picked up a red basket and made my way to the first aisle. It echoed more loudly than it ought to have. Cheap pens, notepad, and bandages. In addition, Tasha requested energy drinks for the nighttime study session. And we weren't prepared for it. An elderly man wearing a discolored Dollar Tree vest was standing at the front counter. It read Mr. Guidry on his name tag. Like he had stepped, his white hair was moist and thin. He didn't blink as he observed me from the downpour. He said, "Storm's getting mean," as I passed. "Yeah," I said, feigning to browse through my phone despite the fact that I was without signal. "In this town, roads flood quickly," he continued, maintaining eye contact. "Ain't no warning when it comes." I didn't answer. Like many women do when a man says anything that vaguely sounds like a threat but is most likely not, I simply smiled sweetly. He rang me up slowly as if he had nothing else to go when I reached the counter. "You live around here?" "No," I replied, only stepping through. He paused before passing the bag to me. "I hope you leave before midnight. After nightfall, a lot of odd traffic." I chuckled half-heartedly. "I'll be short." He didn't chuckle in return. When I stepped outside, the lights flickered. The crack of thunder was near, too near. Then I heard it splashing behind me. In the parking lot, footsteps, pools. I persuaded myself it was nothing at first. Mr. Gry might have emerged after me. Perhaps my nerves were just jangling because of the thunder. I turned to see him, though. His hoodie stuck to his body like damp skin, and he was a towering, bone-soaked figure. He stood uncomfortably near as if he had been waiting without saying anything or running. I went cold. He sprang at Tasha's car's passenger side, moving too quickly for someone his size. There was a mushy thud as my Dollar Tree bag struck the floor. I can't recall opening the door. All I can recall is throwing myself into the driver's seat with my heart racing. I wrenched the door shut as his hand banged on the window. I stepped on the gas and let out a loud, frantic scream. The Corolla sprang into motion. He slipped in the water and staggered back in the mirror, but I didn't put an end to it. I didn't make sure he did. The highway resurfaced in front of me like a river of black glass, and I didn't flinch. More was smudged than was removed by the wipers. The windshield was fogged by my breath. My hands were shaking so badly that I nearly missed the dining turnoff. The Hollow Grill was a 24-hour establishment that had the first lights I saw. Warm, yellow, real lights. My pulse was pounding as if it would never stop, and I pulled in crookedly. I was secure, I hoped. Coffee and grease filled the diner's interior. With my eyes still fixed on the storm outside, I fell into a booth by the window. When I requested to use their landline, the waitress hardly batted an eye. My phone was wet, flashing, and worthless. The deputy was wet from head to toe, named Red Sergeant Tibito. and had the physique of a retired linebacker when he arrived. When I told him about the man at the car, how close he got and how quickly he moved, he initially listened without saying anything. His expression changed when I brought up the Dollar Tree. That section of road, he uttered softly. Locals call it the Phantom Mile. He took out a small notebook and turned to an old page. He went on to say, "You're the third person this month. Separate stormy night, same location, same description. Quick, hooded, towering man." He waved away my further questions. "It's simply a vagrant camping by the bayou. According to some people. He's not from here according to others. Miss LeBlanc, I don't listen to ghost stories. However, I am aware of this. Out there, people vanish. That stayed with me. Individuals vanish. As if it were any other Thursday night, Sergeant Thibodeau handed me a document to complete and advised me to drive carefully. My fries were not eaten, simply sat looking at the shattered contents of the passenger seat was covered in Dollar Tree bags. Notebooks twisting and twisted, gauze soaked with rain. That was the last time I drove that road. I'm still thinking about that night weeks later. Not every evening. Only the silent ones. The kind where windows rattle in their frames and thunder rumbles low in the sky. I'll either fold laundry or study. I will also recall the hand on the window, the vacant eyes, and the overwhelming panic that made me feel as though I was drowning. I only mentioned that the store flooded and the automobile became stranded, without telling Tasha anything else. She asked few questions. When I get that quiet, she never does. But that night I know I changed. I now keep a pepper spray can in the glove box and a flashlight in my bag at all times. I banned my ex and stopped responding to his texts. Regardless of the cost, I always sleep with the porch light on. People often talk about trauma as though it always blows up, yet occasionally it calms. Like fog in the bones, it was heavy and silent. That Dollar Tree receipt is still with me. Stuffed between pages of my pharmacology textbook, it is crumpled and discolored. Occasionally I locate it and follow the line where Mr. According to Guidry, be safe under the total. What I observed is unknown to me. I'm not sure if he was genuine or not. Perhaps a man in need, perhaps not. However, I am aware that the roads, particularly those along the bayou, do not forget, particularly at night. Additionally, don't stop if you ever come across a gas station that is closed and a green sign that is flashing in the rain. Don't give up no matter how lost you feel. In the rain. Don't give up no matter how lost you feel. It's hot and then it's hot in New Mexico. It's the type that devours you from head to toe. The computerized sign outside the petrol station blinked 115 times on July 28, 2023. But inside the inn other ways, Dollar Tree was worse. For a week, the air conditioner had been broken. It wouldn't be fixed by management. Use fans, corporate said. Sweat, plastic, and the scent of microwaved tacos filled the break area. There were no fans. When I was 19, I was forced to work 8-hour shifts while wearing a green apron, attempting to make ends meet and pay for my mother's insulin. Since I was in middle school, she has had diabetes. Thursdays are dialysis days. Medicaid hardly made a dent in it. My ex continued to text me. At stop signs, my Corolla with the duct-taped bumper kept shifting into neutral. Additionally, I had already received 2 written-ups for tone, whatever that means. Jenna, the new girl, was the only bright point. Chipped nail polish, brown curls, and laughter that seemed out of place in this setting. Not in my league at all. She was pleasant, though. She addressed me as though I were a human. Then Elias was employed. Wearing a white polo shirt and black pants, he arrived 2 minutes early, his hair styled like a villain from an 80s film. Slender, irritable, and constantly grinning as if he were aware of something repulsive. Without being asked, he moved the sweets aisle to improve flow on the first day. After that, he spent hours humming Ring around the Rosie under his breath. I saw him consume a raw Slim Jim plastic later that week. He saw me looking. He said, "The best part is the casing," with a positive attitude. Feel the texture. I ought to have spoken up. I should have informed our assistant manager, Manny, but I chose not to. From there, it only got worse. Elias did not only behave strangely. The store felt odd because of him. He began arriving early and remaining late. Claimed to like the calm energy following the close. I frequently saw him just standing there looking at pool noodles in the seasonal aisle. The man didn't perspire. Elias was usually smelling of something burned, like old oil and meat left out in the yard, while the rest of us looked like damp towels. Son Jenna began to stay away from him. He was observing her as she restocked the greeting cards. just observing, not conversing. I once approached him and told him to back off. With a simple smile, he remarked, "Some people have softer skin than others," whatever that meant. Items began to disappear, including a bag of those strange soy meatballs, bacon pieces, and raw chicken from the frozen department. The microwave in the break room smelled. Then in the trash I discovered chicken skin. Just flesh, neither prepared nor packed. I coughed. Sucking on his fingers, Elias entered. He referred to it as texture therapy, similar like removing glue from your hands. "You did that as a child, didn't you?" I informed Manny. He dismissed it with a laugh. Claimed to have witnessed worse in the army. Advised me to develop a spine. I closed by myself one evening with Manny and Elias. Jenna had already departed. A migraine or another reason that most likely wasn't an excuse me. There was silence. Too silent. The air had a strong odor. The lights flickered and then went out completely as I was finishing the soda replenishment. There is no power. Not unusual. The entire grid was tense due to the heat. I took my flashlight out. Then I heard it. Manny had been in cleaning supplies in aisle 7, and there were wet, squishy noises coming from there. Hearing something awful is one thing. To see it is another matter. The beam from my flashlight was trembling wildly as I turned the bend. The beam initially struck a shape that was leaned over like a consumer selecting bleach, but it didn't make sense. Then I noticed the blood. Manny's legs were twitching a little like a dying insect, and Elias was squatting over him with his hands inside Manny's neck, peeling and scooping as if he were doing it. I went cold. I lost the ability to use my intellect. All it said was, "Get out." Elias raised his head. He had blood all over his glossy face, and he grinned between his teeth on Manny's cheek. He remarked, "You ever notice," with moist lips. Like oranges, humans peel easily. I felt something snap. I didn't think, so I just smashed a ceramic garden gnome over his head after grabbing it off the summer discount shelf. He stumbled back. I dashed into the heat outside the store. Despite the oppressive air, I was unable to stop. My legs felt like jelly. My hands continued to shake. I rammed the key into the door of the Corolla. Nothing. Not a spark. The gas had been siphoned by Elias. He had, of course. The door burst open behind me. I could hear him approaching. I cried out for assistance. I noticed the lights at that point. Like a guardian angel, an old Peterbilt truck with air brakes and a yelling horn came into the lot. The driver noticed the blood on my face. He dialed 911. By his tire, I fell. I didn't feel secure at all. Not at all, no more. Elias was discovered in the freezer section. When they apprehended him, he was composed, grinning and singing. He didn't fight back. Did not run. Simply stood there wearing Manny's skin as a shawl, swaying a little. They claimed that he used box cutters to pull it off. Nobody had anticipated it. No psychological history or priors. Just a temporary employee from an Albuquerque employment agency. He made phony references. He had a phony ID. He seemed to have emerged from the desert. It was described as a workplace tragedy in a 2-minute broadcast by the local news. The Dollar Tree remained open. The following morning, Jenna texted me a single word and quit. I'm not blaming her, sorry. I didn't get off in time, so my mom missed her dialysis. She was identified for non-compliance by Medicaid. She was no longer covered. The following week, I made an effort to reach a social worker on the phone. To buy her insulin, I had to sell my PS4. We received a counselor from corporate. We were instructed to concentrate on resilience one day. They then handed us a certificate for a 15% employee discount. I'm still employed there. I can't afford to forego it. Elias was replaced by a new employee. He's decent enough. Keep quiet, however. I swear I occasionally see skin shifting on the floor when I walk by the freezer aisle late at night. Now just in case, I carry a box cutter in my sock. People wonder why I didn't give up. As if it were that easy. As if I had choices. However, just because something terrible occurs doesn't mean that life ends. Rent continues to rise. Medical bills continue to be collected. Food stores don't undervalue themselves. Because that's what you do when you're stuck and penniless, I continued working. You show up for work regardless. I get dreams about Elias on some evenings. The manner in which he smiled and walked. I have dreams about peeling. I don't discuss it. I already get broken looks from people. However, I am aware of this. Fangs and claws aren't the only signs of horror. It occasionally sports a name tag. It occasionally whistles children's songs. It occasionally clocks in 5 minutes early. Additionally, it occasionally receives promotion. Off-brand cereal and greeting cards are still sold at the Dollar Tree. And every stinking shift, I continue to pass aisle 7. Even though it's quiet now, I keep an eye out in case someone attempts to peel me the next time. There is more to true horror than monsters. When the monsters depart, it's the systems that keep you where you are, when your sanity is at stake in order to survive. Occasionally knowing that you will return the following day is the scariest thing. It's not that you're courageous, but rather that you lack decision.